Hello. I want to talk about how shame is used to keep people stuck. Now, shame is the lowest of the lowest vibration. If you ever looked at a map of consciousness, you've ever seen this map of consciousness, shame is at the bottom. Yet shame is actually found in everyday interactions. Everyday interactions, you are trying to avoid shame. At least most people are, because if you say something that could be misunderstood or that could offend someone, you will feel shame, or somebody will try to shame you. Because shame is about submission. It's about humiliation. It's about putting somebody down in order to make yourself superior to them. Because if they are shameful and you are not shameful, that means you are superior. Means you are in control. So it's a control device. It's a control device that is used especially by religions, but also governments, cults, especially love to weaponize shame to make sure that people are too afraid to express who they are. When certain traits, behaviors, certain expressions are shamed, people will hide them. And that's really the function of shame, is to make sure that people hide certain behaviors and then repress them so other people can control these behaviors. It's like a puppet. You know, you pull the puppet and you make sure it doesn't go there. Doesn't go there, you know. It's where armoring comes in. Where people feel physically in their body the sensation of, if I go there, if I do that thing, I'm out. To be ashamed is to be out of the game. To be ashamed is to be dead. Is to be dead in the eyes of society, is to be a criminal, an outcast, a monster, really. Now let's show you this map of consciousness. I wanted to show you at the beginning. So you see here, you've probably seen this map of consciousness before. You see courage is in the middle, peace, enlightenment is at the top. Now you can argue about the other things on this list, but I think it makes sense for the most part. The main thing is that shame is at the bottom. Shame is the worst, which is followed by guilt and apathy. So guilt is higher, because guilt usually leads to responsibility. It usually leads to some kind of change. But what does shame lead to? Nothing. It's death. It's the last thing before you die, because it's the last thing at the bottom. And above guilt is apathy, because feeling nothing is better than feeling guilty, right? Well, some may argue at least in guilt there is movement. But is there any movement in shame? Any movement at all? It's a contraction, it's a hiding. At least with guilt there is a desire for change. And that's the difference between guilt and shame. When you are guilty of something, you want to change, to make things better. But when you are ashamed, all you want is to hide. Because shame means there is no path to resolution. Resolution is not available. There's nothing that you can do, because you are now an enemy. You are now a bad object. To be a bad object is to have no access to certain resources, certain people, what they have. So we try to avoid shame. We try to avoid being shamed because it's destructive, as it says here on scale. It's the most destructive thing to our lives. When we feel ashamed, it's usually because we have caused destruction towards ourselves in a way that destroys our influence on others, makes sure that other people abandon us, that we don't get anything from them, that we don't get what we want. We don't get what we want because we have failed. We have done something that is disgusting, despicable, shameful. So it's a sort of depression, you could say, a depression of energy. Now, people use this to put pressure, depressure, on others. But they do this unconsciously, because normally people don't want others to feel ashamed unless they want to control them. They want to have revenge on them. So there's really nothing positive that can be said about shame at all. So if you ever experience shame in your life, if anybody ever shames you, ask yourself, how is this serving you? Can this lead to anything for you? Anything at all? Because if it can't, then you will stop it right then and there. The shame stops there when you realize, when you come to the realization, the awakening, that the shame serves no purpose whatsoever. It doesn't do anything for you. But it makes sure that whoever wants you to submit gets what they want. So it's about submission. Because you see, when you submit to somebody, when you admit that you are a bad object, it does give you something. It gives you a chance that one day they will lead you back into their life. If you can take the shame on you. It has a certain Buddhistic, Jesus-like quality, a Neptunian quality. To take shame on you means to sacrifice yourself. And that's why we see shame being a major thing in narcissism, in personality disorders. Because you see, when you are ashamed, you know it's not going to give you anything. You know unconsciously, you know it will not do anything for you. But it will sacrifice you. And there's a belief that through your sacrifice, things will be given to you. So then the question arises, if shame could be a fawn response. If somebody is generating shame, it's a self-generated emotion that serves a purpose. I mean, clearly, we wouldn't feel ashamed unless we wanted, on some level, no matter how minuscule, to be ashamed, to serve a specific goal. The intention here is to give yourself to the other party, whether it's an abuser, whether it's a narcissist, a psychopath, whether it is like a Stockholm syndrome, you know. You give yourself to them, you submit, you say, look how bad I am, look, I take the shame onto me, I accept how bad I am. So if I accept how bad I am, it should make the abuser happy, right? Since that is what they wanted. They wanted you to feel bad. Which raises the question, if you feel ashamed, do you want to feel ashamed? Or does somebody else want you to feel ashamed? If you are ashamed, was shaming you the goal all along? Was the goal all along to make you feel like you have no self-esteem? There's a sadistic quality behind shame that has to be explored. Again, another question arises. If somebody wants us to feel ashamed, does that make them a sadist? Are they deriving pleasure from it? What do they get out of shaming us? And of course they get superiority, as I explained in the beginning. It elevates the position, so it strengthens and fortifies their self-esteem. Which should not be a surprise then why narcissists love to use shame. And shame is primarily used by individuals who have a low self-esteem. If a heightening and increasing of self-esteem is the result, then an increasing of self-esteem is the goal. Now, why would somebody want to use you, siphon your energy, control you, put the spell on you, put the shame on you? To elevate their self-esteem. Can you imagine how rotten, how corrupt, how despicable, how deranged, lunatic an individual must be to want to use something, the lowest of the lowest? Look at the scale again. The lowest, okay, the lowest vibration, the lowest tool possible out of all the tools available, out of everything that this person could possibly choose to elevate themselves. They chose the worst, the most destructive, the most despicable, to elevate themselves, to make themselves stronger by making you weaker. So then another question arises. Is shame a form of psychic vampirism? Of course, the answer is yes. Obviously. Obviously, isn't it? If you know all of this about shame, it is no way but it's not vampirism. Why? Because again, they need you to feel ashamed, to feel better about themselves. Take, gain. It's a zero-sum game. You lose, they win. At the bottom, the lowest. You lose, they win. You gain nothing from shame. But you hope that by allowing them to win, you will maintain the relationship. In other words, you maintain control. If you accept the shame, it means you are in control. It means the situation is predictable. You know they are going to win. Unconsciously. You don't think it, but you know they win, you lose. But through your loss, through your defeat, your sacrifice, your giving away of your energy, you assume that you will get it back, that they will give it back to you. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. Let me cooperate with my abuser, and my abuser will leave me alone. It's a fine response. Play dead, they will leave me alone. It's very simple. So simple, actually. Let them siphon me, and I will have some kind of control. Now, why would you choose the lowest of the lowest option to take control, to maintain the relationship with this abuser or whoever it is? Because clearly it is an abuser. You see, not everybody has evil intentions if they use shame. It's an unconscious thing. But you'll have to ask yourself, do you want to spend time with people who operate on the lowest vibration possible, even if it's only for a moment? Look again, the lowest. I keep repeating this. Why would you spend time with them? Why would you sacrifice yourself to them? What do you gain? Do you gain money? Do you gain attention, validation? Why do you need them to validate you? Why do you need to cooperate with them? Why do you need to sacrifice to them? What do you get back? Because this is a zero-sum game. Make no mistake. You're not going to win this if you use shame. So then, explore the scale again. Look, we go through guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, pride. We go higher on the scale. When you get to anger, you're much higher. So perhaps dominating is healthier than fawning. An interesting question. Is dominating healthier, higher vibrational than fawning? A question few people want to ask because it is considered evil and antisocial. To dominate, to intimidate, to threaten, to get control back. And yet it is healthier than the divine Neptunian Jesus on the cross sacrifice through shame. Yes. So you see, even this scale, and I bet the person who made this scale had no idea that shame is sacrifice. And sacrifice is the lowest of all vibrations. The lowest of the lowest. If you sacrifice your self-esteem, humiliation. It's the lowest, it says right there. The person who made this didn't know this. But yet it's right there. So, anger, fight, is healthier than flight. And when you go up, courage, it's still a fighting courage. But when you get into neutrality, and unfortunately in this case it's written wrong, neutrality, what? When you go into willingness, it's kind of confrontation, right? Willingness. And then acceptance. Acceptance means you don't care. You are alright. You got what you wanted. That is acceptance. You won't get to acceptance unless you get what you want. So after the willingness to go for what you want, you get to that stage. And then you arrive at reason. Because now that you got what you wanted, you don't have to fight anymore. You can think clearly now. You can have a higher perspective. So it's intelligence. And now that you can think clearly, love is the next thing. So I guess you could say, how could you not feel love if everything's right? I mean, I don't know. But anyways, you get the gist. All of these responses, fight, flight, fawn, they're all at the bottom. But fighting is the highest of them all. And I think this video reminds you in some way that if you fight, you are one step ahead. At least you're doing better than those who are down below. And if you can get what you want, you can accept, and then you are good. That's all that you have to do. You see, if you want to transform into this through these levels, it's all about applying a different strategy for each level. But the higher levels, it's always the same. Get what you want, and everything else will just come automatically. You don't have to think anymore. You don't have to decide. You don't have to make decisions of any kind. Simply because the energy is moving on its own. Because it's flowing. The lower energies on the scale, shame included, they are not flowing. They're all contractions that lead to some kind of destruction of some kind. And fighting also leads to destruction, but you don't get destroyed. Fawn, Flight, you get destroyed. Fight, at least you have a chance. I'm saying this because everybody will arrive at flight or fawn at some point. And it's in that moment, when you are about to fawn to another party, that you remember this. If you fight, you will be healthier. It's a very simple thing. If once you understand this, then you are one step closer to letting go of shame. Because in shame there is no more fighting. There is complete defeat. There's complete freeze, standing still. There's no movement in shame. Except perhaps a moving away from reality, moving away from presence. As you go up the scale, you become more present. It's through presence that the energy is opened up. So when you feel like you're not there, when you feel like you're not accepted for who you are, you can't be yourself, you can't be open, you can't get what you want, you don't want to be there, you want to run away, you want to disappear, you're not present. So you don't have the energy to expand. So anything that happens in that moment will be destructive unless you can turn it around. Now, how do you do that? By focusing on what you want. Because what you want dictates the direction, where you go on the scale in general. Because if you want peace, then the question is, what are you willing to do to get there? What do you do to get to peace? Peace within or peace without? Because if it's peace without, you're right back where you started, at the bottom. Because peace without could mean appease the Stockholm Syndrome abuser, appease the narcissist, appease for the peace, right? So then transcendence isn't transcendence at all, but it's self-negation, leaving the body. And God consciousness isn't God consciousness. It's death consciousness, not even being there. And instead of contributing to the world, you sacrifice yourself to the world. So you see, these things are very similar. Shame and peace are opposite to each other, but they're very, very similar strategies. Because the goal is always the same. The goal is always peace. No matter where you are on the scale, no matter what you do, the goal is peace. Enlightenment? I don't know how you can say that. I mean, it even says on the scale, Jesus Christ, Krishna, Lord Buddha. Was Buddha really enlightened? Letting go of his desires? I don't think so. But then again, the guy who made the scale doesn't really have that much knowledge. But he did know one thing. That fawning is not as healthy as fighting. And the desire is healthier than apathy. So wanting something is healthier when wanting nothing. And these are very interesting lessons that we can take from such a scale. However imperfect it is, and I do find it quite flawed, but it does help us a little bit. Anyways, that was just a quick video on shame. I just wanted to talk about the subject. I hope this helps you to have a better idea of what you're dealing with. Because shame is really just a fun response. You sacrifice yourself, they sadistically drain your energy, they enjoy it, so they feel better about themselves by putting you down. A zero-sum game. You down, they up. Narcissists use this all the time, but also weak people use it. People who don't have a strong sense of self use shame against you. Because they have tried the other things and they have failed to self-validate. They have failed to desire. They have failed to be proud. So they failed to be angry. When self-esteem is at the lowest, we will use anything and anything we can get our hands on. Because a person who has a low self-esteem is starving. And if they're starved long enough, they become like an animal, stuck in the reptile brain. And when you become a reptile, that's when you use strategies like shaming, blaming, intimidation, threatening, domination, to control the other person, to regulate your internal environment. Anybody who takes over your internal environment, who makes your self-esteem go down to elevate themselves, is a pathological individual. Maybe not in general, maybe not always, but in that moment, they are mentally ill. And you don't want to go there. If you don't want to be on that consciousness, you must not engage with those kinds of people. You must protect your energy. You must detach. And you must be in charge of your own internal environment. Not by using them, not by playing this game of shaming them, fighting them, having an ego battle of sorts. No. You strengthen yourself. Have a strong self-esteem, strong self-image. Know who you are. Accept yourself. And when you accept yourself, shame is not a possibility. Humiliation is the opposite of acceptance. So when you are shamed, the antidote is clear. And it's not so difficult unless you are gaslit, manipulated into doubting yourself. Because self-doubt can cripple even the greatest warrior. So don't fall for it. Don't fall victim to shame. And if you like this video, leave a like. And now I disappeared. My goodness. Leave a like and subscribe, and don't disappear like me. Don't fall to them like this. But if you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next.